I forbid you to take another step down these stairs!
Okay.
Ah! Son! Come back! We'll find you!
The legacy of the direct-to-video Disney sequels, midquels, prequels, blah blah blah, is often seen as one of hatred and animosity. Whenever they are brought up, people often talk about how bad most of them truly are. Some people often think about Belle's Magical World, while others probably bring up The Hunchback of Notre Dame, or Brother Bear 2. And no, I will not take back what I said about Brother Bear 1, it is really bad. Sorry, not sorry. However, despite how awful these movies tend to be, every once in a while we get a surprise whenever a movie proves itself to be rather adequate, I guess. Some of these movies are stuff like Bambi 2, Tarzan 2, Return to Neverland, and a few others, but none of these have the same kind of impact on the direct-to-video Disney lineage as Cinderella III: A Twist in Time. Kind of like The Lion King 2 and 101 Dalmatians 2, Cinderella 3 is often seen as one of the best, if not the best, direct-to-video Disney sequel of them all. I mean, seriously, how weird is that? Cinderella 3 is the best one out of all of them? Really? I mean, sorry, that's just kind of weird to me, that's all. But I do remember watching it when I was a kid, and I remember liking it as a kid. But I also liked Brother Bear as a kid, and that goes to show how stupid 11-year-old me was. But yeah, I watched it again, and yeah, it's easily the best. I've actually been watching a large number of these movies in preparations for reviews, but to be perfectly honest with you guys, it just really ain't all that worth it. As I said with The Little Mermaid 2, many of these movies are just kind of meh. Like, at their worst, they're just your typical bad. And at their best, they usually just fall into that okay territory like The Lion King 2 did. I think people give these movies credit not because they're genuinely great movies, but simply because they're the best out of a bad bunch. And to me, I don't know, I just ask the question, why buy a bad bunch of bananas that might have one or two good bananas in it, when you can just buy a more fresh batch of bananas where most of them, if not all of them, are good? I'm just saying. That isn't to discredit the good stuff in this movie. I'm just saying it's tainted nonetheless because of the legacy that is the direct-to-video Disney sequels, midquels, blah blah, well, you know, whatever, you get it. It's like taking that one good banana and just dipping it in shit, and now that good banana has shit on it. But fortunately, we can still unravel the banana and eat the banana shit-free, which is what we're gonna do today. So yeah, let's do that. Now, before we talk about Cinderella 3, we of course have to go over Cinderella 2. Or, well, that is to say, one part of Cinderella 2. Cinderella 2 was actually 3 separate stories, with the first 2 being honestly so boring I actually fell asleep during one of them. I'm not even joking. I legitimately passed out. It was that fucking dull. I think it was the one where the mouse turned into a person? I think? Like I said, I honestly can't remember. As for the final one though, well, it's not good, but I see why people say it's the best. In the third story, one of Cinderella's evil stepsisters, Anastasia, ends up falling in love with the town baker, but her mother and sister Drizella forbids the two from being together. Despite how awful Anastasia was to her in the past, Cinderella chooses to help her with the baker, and with her help, Anastasia manages to win him over. Now, again, it's not that good. It's insanely rushed, and it goes through just about every romance cliche you can imagine, from the makeup montage to the stupid misunderstanding, and yeah, it's all pretty bland. But with that being said, it's not like I don't see the potential in the story, especially when redeeming one of the sisters is actually a pretty cool idea. I think people give this story a break because they like the idea that it presents, but that doesn't exactly mean it was done well. If anything, it kind of makes it worse when they have an amazing idea, but then it gets weighed down by a bad execution. But as I said before, this story did have potential, and I think the writers for Cinderella 3 saw that too. The story of Cinderella 3 focuses a lot on the villains, which, after rewatching the original after all these years, turn out to be the best parts of the original film. Now don't get me wrong, Cinderella was a decent character, and the mice were there, but the stepsisters, and especially the stepmother, were just oozing with so much personality. Probably my favorite scene of Lady Tremaine was her introduction. The way she's completely covered in darkness, the way she speaks so softly until she's forced to speak up. There's just this dignity and grace to her cruelty that really helped her stand out as one of Disney's truest evil villains. Not to mention that her voice actress would later go on to voice Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty as well. And what makes this even more incredible is that Lady Tremaine's voice actress in 3 also voices Maleficent in the Kingdom Hearts games. Like, how insane is it that this sort of thing has happened twice? Like, seriously, that's crazy! Anyway, life has basically gone to shit for them since Cinderella left to go marry the prince, and now they're all pretty much miserable. But despite all of this, Anastasia still dreams of one day marrying a prince of her own. So basically, this movie kind of subverts our expectations and makes Anastasia the main character. Kind of. Not really, but pretty much. So the evil stepfamily is able to get their hands on Fairy Godmother's magic wand and uses it to turn back time so that Anastasia fits the slipper and is taken away to the palace instead. So in a weird way, Anastasia is the main character in a movie called Cinderella III. Yeah, that's actually kind of weird, but to be fair, it actually kind of works. Like I said before, it's like the writers saw the potential in the last story of Cinderella II and wanted to improve upon it. As I said, the last story was only about 22 minutes long, about the length of your average TV episode. It still felt rather rushed and couldn't be fully developed. So in this story, the writer said, hey, remember when Anastasia was actually kind of sympathetic and likable in the last movie? Well, how about we work on that? And from that point on, this is pretty much Anastasia's story. I honestly can't comprehend what the writers were thinking trying to make one of the stepsisters redeemable since they were so awful in the original movie, but I gotta give them credit, they did a hell of a job with what they had with Anastasia. We learn that deep down, she was really just jealous of Cinderella's beauty, and thus acted the way she did because, well, her toxic mother and sister encouraged it. Deep down, you can tell she wanted to get away from it all too, but didn't have the strength that Cinderella did. So when she finally has the chance to get her own happily ever after, she takes it, even if it means stealing it from her sister who earned it way more than she did. But as she spends time in the castle with both the prince and his father, she begins to realize that maybe she's not getting what she wants after all. Let's be honest for a quick second here. The original Cinderella is for cornballs, okay? It is a total cheese factory, okay? When you think of old, classic Disney and Disney magic, then this is what comes to mind. The princess singing to animals, they help her with her clothes, true love at first sight, you get it. But when it comes to the classics, you tend to suspend your disbelief for a bit, as it was the time period, and the point of the story isn't really about logic, it's a fairy tale, you know, happily ever after and so forth.
But sire, this slipper may fit any number of girls. That's his problem. He's given his word.
So in this movie, yeah, that cheese is still pretty smelly. You have this running thing where when two people touch, they just kind of know they're meant to be. And like I said before, the mice are there. Goody. So yeah, this movie is still pretty campy, but considering Anastasia's arc and the lesson that she's supposed to learn about what true love really is, then I think it still works fine. You know, in a campy, cheesy sort of way. Of course, the movie doesn't just treat love like it's some magical force. They do explain that it is something you still have to work for to make it work. It won't just fall in your lap, and it shouldn't. It's something that you, or in this case Anastasia, needs to find for herself, or else it won't actually be real. That's surprisingly kind of deep for Cinderella III to be teaching its audience, but it's still a good lesson nonetheless. And by the end of the movie, Anastasia realizes her mistake and what she truly wants. Taking away someone else's happiness doesn't mean she gets it. And it's not just out of clear conscience either. Throughout the film, as Anastasia spends time with the prince, we actually see that the two truly aren't really that compatible. One is sophisticated, charming, and honestly pretty funny, while the other is loud, obnoxious, and pretty clumsy. Okay, these aren't the most in-depth characters, but, you know, direct-to-video Disney sequel, it's the best we're gonna get, and to be fair, it works fine. I also really love the interactions that she has with the king, who went from being this really angry asshole in the original to this genuinely kind of sweet and wholesome old guy who cherishes the simpler things in life, such as remembering how his wife used to be terrible at dancing, or how she loved collecting seashells. He even kept one after she died to remember her by, and even gave it to Anastasia as a gift so that she would know what love was. And in the end, after everything was done, the king actually lets her keep it. Again, that's some really wholesome stuff right there. I like that. Cinderella forgives her for everything, and even in the end credits, she meets up with the baker again. That's awesome! Although I do wish it was an actual scene as opposed to just a picture in the end credits, but I digress. Now don't get me wrong, Anastasia is no Zuko when it comes to redemption arcs, but throughout the entire film, she remains likable, sympathetic, and she also has her funny moments, which is a lot more than I could say about people like Madeline, or Coda, or especially Mushu. Anastasia is probably the main reason why this film stands out compared to all of the other direct-to-video Disney sequels, makequels, prequels, You just really get her, and you want to see her come around and learn her lesson. It's not amazing or anything, but you do grow to genuinely care about her and the lessons she learns. Now, of course, there are other things that this movie does have going for it. The animation, for example, is just so gorgeous and good looking. I love the colors and the lighting. I mean, God, just look at the way they shade the characters sometimes. And the green. Oh my gosh, I just love how evil green can be. Disney, bring back the green. We all know you have plenty of green, so come on, bring back the green. I also really like the prince in this movie. They actually give him a pretty good personality in which he's very witty, he's kind, and at times even points out how stupid things can be. Like, for example, the fact that more than one person can fit the glass slipper.
But it would appear that more than one girl actually fits the slipper.
Yeah, funny how more than one person can have the same foot size, huh guys? Also, this scene alone makes the whole movie worth it.
Pull the lever, Kronk.
Okay.
Seriously, he just looks at that window and just goes,
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
So yeah, everything about this movie just sounds great, right? The villains are deliciously evil, Anastasia has a really good redemption arc, the movie looks good, it's funny, all in all, it sounds just about perfect, right? Well, this is still a direct-to-video Disney sequel, guys, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out the problems. For starters, I really don't care about the mice. I don't think they're funny. I didn't like them as a kid. I didn't like them in the original. Can we talk about that for a second? In the original movie, the mice take up like 70% of screen time in that film. I'm not saying the original is a bad movie in any way, for the time period anyway. It's just kind of weird, that's all. Speaking of Cinderella, she's fine in this one, I guess. Honestly though, I can't help but feel like she's a bit dull. She's not bad per se, but when you watch the movie, you ask the question, what exactly is Cinderella going to learn? And by the end of it, the question still remains. What did Cinderella learn on her journey?
Nothing.
She loses everything, but just kind of gets it all back in the end anyway. Sure, she forms a new bond with Anastasia, but what lesson does she learn from this experience? How does she grow as a character? And that is my problem with her. It's also the reason why I ended up caring more about Anastasia than I did about Cinderella. Cinderella really doesn't go through any arc of any kind. She doesn't really change as a person. She just stays the same, and honestly, that's just kind of boring to me. Sure, she fights for what's hers, but when nothing new is gained or earned, then why should I care? Why not in the beginning have Cinderella start off as a bit, I don't know, like maybe she's a touch spoiled from her new life of luxury? Have it so where Cinderella starts to lose sight of her humble self in the first movie. And as this movie goes on, she begins to realize that she's starting to become a bit like the stepmother. Like, holy shit, would that have been interesting? Also, it really could have made Cinderella's relationship with Anastasia all that more meaningful. You could have had flashbacks to their childhood where maybe they got along at first and were even really close for a while, but then as they grew up, they grew apart mainly due to Lady Tremaine's influence. That would have made their reconnection even better than it is in the final film. Basically, be like Anna and Elsa, only 1,000 times better. Halfway through the movie, I actually forgot that this was a musical. But then when Cinderella was on that boat about to be shipped away forever, she starts singing and I'm like, whoa, wait, they sing in this movie? But seriously though, I don't remember a single song in this film. Every last track, whenever they do show up, is just forgettable. Although to be fair, I think outside of Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, people don't really remember the songs all that well from Cinderella in general. So, yeah, that's about all I have to say about this one, honestly. I'll admit I liked it a lot more than I thought it would. Usually with some of these movies, I liked them as a kid, but as I grew up, I realized they really weren't all that good after all. Cinderella 3 isn't my personal favorite of the sequels, mainly because I just never really had a strong connection with Cinderella in general. I guess if I had to pick which one was my favorite... Honestly, I don't fucking know. I don't care about these movies enough to have a favorite. I'll just say this one's my favorite anyway because it's the best, okay? We good? We good. For a direct-to-video Disney sequel, it surprisingly has a lot of heart. It's not fantastic by any means, but for a direct-to-video Disney sequel, it's pretty astonishing how much this movie actually tries with what it has to offer. It could have just phoned it in like so many of these movies do, but instead it wanted to actually be good. And you know what? They actually succeeded for what they had. I mean, being the best direct-to-video Disney sequel isn't really a huge accomplishment, but at least the people behind this movie at least had the dignity to actually try. So I'll give this movie that much. Despite being part of a huge pile of shit, this movie at least had the pride to keep its chin up high and be better than that. Seriously, what a twist indeed. Well, I think that about does it for the direct-to-video Disney sequels, prequels, mickles, ma. Like I said before, when I started these movies, I wasn't planning on doing them all. Just the ones that either I was interested in doing, or the ones you wanted to see the most. But by this point, I think you all kind of get it. I mean, seriously, what is there to say about these movies that hasn't been said already? Maybe if there's one you guys do want to see me do really badly, then sure, I'll come back and take a look at it. But I think for now, it's about time that I found a new challenge. A new monster. A new series to begin. Oh, not you! And done. Woo! Finally. Oh, man. Whew. Yep. It's about that time. You gonna take care of things while I'm gone? That's my boy. All right. Whew. Oh yeah, it's time. It's finally time. Okay. I forgot the keys. Yo. Yeah, I'm in the van right now. I'm on my way. I know these next 2 months are gonna be the fucking best. All right, I'll be at your house soon. See you guys in a minute. Later. Okay. Fuck it. I forgot the keys again still.